the approach up until an initial awakening, and the approaches after, especially when we talk about non-duality. What my terminology for non-duality is the experience of physical separation, boundaries, subject-object experience, all of that. They're kind of two different approaches in a sense, and the non-dual comes later. But with that said, this process is so different for everyone, and whatever feels interesting to you, whatever feels relevant for you to investigate, you should investigate it. With all that said, when you talked about the subject-object construct, when we are approaching first awakening, when especially if you're using something like a one-pointed approach or mu, or even who am I, usually the advice is you kind of shut the sense gates, meaning you don't need to worry about sound sensations when you're meditating. Now, when you're driving, totally different. I wouldn't recommend doing this when you're driving necessarily, not this intense one-pointed stuff, but you may be able to carry it with you throughout the day, the sense of it. But the mind will still be chattering on, and there's sounds and sensations, and that's fine. When you're sitting with this, though, when you have quietude, like meditation, when you're going off to sleep at night, the moment you wake up, there's nothing else to do, nothing else to distract yourself with. And it just comes back to who. It's not so much that we're trying to dissolve the subject-object construct. It actually becomes something like pure subjectivity. And that's why many people call it the I am sense, or even the realization of I am when the shift occurs, because it doesn't just feel like, it is pure subjectivity, is pure I. And it's a very strange thing, because some people recognize it far earlier. Other people notice it later as it's dropping away, or as it's kind of dissolving, which is later in realization. But when you're working directly with self-inquiry, one-pointed approach, what is mu? Who am I? Where am I? Until it gets very quiet, then at that point, it's kind of like, let's shut the sense gates. I'm not in any way like a scholar in Hinduism, but I know the Bhagavad Gita begins where the five horses are drawn in. And so the five horses being the five sense gates, it's like, and even in the Bible, there's mention of this by Christ. It's like, close those sense gates and pull attention back into the sense of I, investigate it directly into the sense of subjectivity. And it becomes this pure subjectivity. It can do this through thought as well, until the mind gets very, very, very quiet. But it's not so much a drifting experience. It's not a mind wandering experience. It's quite alert, actually. It's a sweet spot between alertness and contentlessness. That's where the magic happens. And when you have achieved, when this is there, then notice usually what catches people at this point, or keeps them re-identifying subtly, are subtle thoughts. And there are a couple of things. One is, what would I do about sounds or sensations? In that moment, even the noticing of a sensation is itself a thought. The noticing of a sensation is a thought. At this stage of things, it is. It's a label, essentially. So if the mind says, oh, well, now there's a sensation in the leg. Oh, okay, well, there's one more thought. And it should bring you right back into that consciousness, into that query, the question, the fundamental koan, which is quiet. If there's even a mental image of the face, the nose, the body, that's also a thought. And recognize one more thought. Where am I? Who am I? Or as Ramana said, for whom did that thought arise? To whom did that thought arise? And just back into the quiet. The other types of thoughts that catch people here often are practice-based thoughts, like these little subtle doubts, like, am I doing this right? I'm not sure, or this one, here I am again, every time I get this far and then I can't get farther, something happens, right? It's when we don't see overtly that that's just another thought, that it tends to be a little bit of a barrier. It's kind of like this subtle thought that we're just kind of holding on to, but the stream is trying to go over the waterfall.